by, and all the things we do during the week, all the tasks, all the things that we're in a hurry, to take this moment to just be. To hear your own breathing, to be aware of the people in this beloved community around you. If you wish, you can place your feet on the ground, take some nice deep breaths, and just take this time to be. Let me share some words of meditation with you. Here in this place, here at this hour, our breath as sure as any known power. Here in this heartbeat, here at this silent beat, here in this gathering, here at this overlook is a gathering of the past, of the very moment of the gathering of intertwined hopes. Set alongside any fears but courage, held with others say this: proceed, proceed, proceed. For this is our hour, this is our time, these are our songs, this is our dance, our hands clasped, to let go and seek the outward world. Here in this place, here at this hour, we begin as always, but we begin.
Inherit the dignity of every person.
here we are, gathered together, waiting and expectant. Some of us arrived here this morning in a jubilant mood. Some are dealing with losses. Some are dealing with anxieties, health issues, and uncertainties that gnaw at the spirit and body. But I would say, despite what mood or state of mind or health we arrive here as individuals, I cannot help but think we are all here to feel connected again, to leave feeling the warmth of friendships, to have more energy to start the work week with, to have our children equipped with better tools to deal with the ethical issues of the world, to laugh, to mourn, and to be asked to be put to work as a peacemaker, a builder of bridges, as a justice creator. Catherine Martin last Sunday wonderfully explored, I think, the need to use the power of love within our beloved community, keeping the connections open and positive connections. Her exploration of remaining open to learning about others was very powerful. And so, I saw my message more clearly defined this morning as exploring maybe that next step, taking the power of love, connection, and change within ourselves and among each other to the outer world beyond our doors. Now, I realize, I'm speaking to the choir, preaching to the choir here, because we all do a lot of that already. But I think it's good to acknowledge and to validate and to affirm that work and to explore that together. This beloved community is one place, not the only place, but one place we can grow our strengths to work for beauty in the world. Catherine McTeague in her hymnal says it this way: we come together this morning to remind one another to rest for a moment on the forming edge of our lives, to resist the headlong tumble into the next moment, until we claim for ourselves awareness and gratitude, taking the time to look into one another's faces and see their communion, the reflection of our own eyes. This house of laughter and silence, memory and hope, is hallowed by our presence together. For this is a special place that calls upon deep wells of hope that we need in the face of a world that, yes, and I rather dramatically titled my message, basically a screaming world, power of love in a screaming world. But it is, I think, more starkly revealed that the world right now is screaming in pain. That there seems to be intentional, enduring cruelty. There's a cynicism, there's a thinking of zero-sum win or lose, glorying in divisiveness. Perhaps not intentional, but certainly an enabling of bigotry, and certainly a rising tide of xenophobia. So these are realities that could, I say could, we're not going to let it, but could drive us to despair, even for a moment, and that does think happen. This is why within our community we need to call upon, yes, our sense of humor and acknowledgement of everyday grace and beauty, to face the dread that can gnaw on our belly, that can haunt the spirit, and make us want to hide and live in a constant state of rage. When we see kids in cages and kids crying for their parents. But we can move out there into the world, open the minds and hearts of people. We do it every day. We can provide hope by our individual and collective actions. Now, we as Unitarian Universalists have a theological story that lays the groundwork for our work in the world as peacemakers. Our seventh principle, which we were just singing it, states, live a respect for the interdependent web of existence of all which we are a part. And the second comes from the concept of a promise we make to ourselves and to each other that we shall travel together through time to encourage our growth as persons, as a community of faith, a faith that says we can make the world more fair. A faith that says, if indeed the arc of the universe bends toward justice, then friends, we are the ones to help shape that arc. It seems a common enough idea that we share the journey, but it is a holy journey, It is a sacred journey. George Kimmich Beach, one of our finest contemporary UU theologians, says that we are a, quote, covenant-making animal, unquote. That we create relationships of mutual responsibility out of voluntary choice. That is key, voluntary choice. As he says, we violate them. We're human beings, we violate them. But the act of covenanting requires the freedom for us not to only merely consent to be part of a community, but to give to it and the others the gifts of our courage, the gifts of our doubts, yes, the gifts of our energy, the gifts of our work, the gifts of our joy, yes, the gifts of our sadness, and our gifts of power as a human being. This is important to us as moral agents. Now, Beach eloquently points out that covenant is both a descriptive and prescriptive principle in human life. It bridges the gap between our being and our doing, between ontology and ethics, between isness and oughtness. So, where do we go from there? Given that we care about our personal spiritual development, that we care about our community enough to participate in its life, why are we here this morning? Is it enough to participate in this community, not with the word even or especially added to the active leadership of it? How do I make the difference we speak of? For our common work, my friends, is moving out into the world. It requires translating our religious ideals, ideas, into actions that make a declaratory statement of love in the powerful face of violations of it. To organizing ourselves with other groups and persons who would align with us to make a difference. And those alliances can be ones we might never think about. We will find ourselves having to make choices as individuals and as a community on what we focus on, because there's so much going on, so much that needs to be attended to. One person may choose getting involved in electoral campaigns, protecting LGBT rights, advocating for the acknowledging of the reality, which is sad we have to do that, not let alone working on climate change. Another person might advocate for the restoration of reason and science in administration agencies such as the EPA and the Interior Department. There is plenty of work, if you think about it, just for people to keep lists, mind you, of decisions, of regulations, and practices and lost data that needs to be restored when the time is right. There are many persons and groups we can work with, and we have been working with. I think of all the marches, the letters written, the phone calls to legislators, community volunteer work that we do right now. And in coalition building, we can hold out the hand of goodwill to those, it's not the easiest of work, but to those who have changed their minds, who realize that nastiness writ large has gone way too far, and are ready to join us in common cause with those who seek the restoration of decency, of compassion, of reason, and the literal planet-saving need for science. One of the powerful positive reactions to the Trump-Jeff Sessions imposed family separation policy was all the declarations of opposition and outrage. I did the research on this. It's absolutely amazing, the range of groups that expressed their outrage and anger and the need to change this. So, the groups such as Southern Baptist Convention, Franklin Graham, all the living former First Ladies, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. Our own Unitarian Universalist Association released, I think, a very powerful statement. It made this point. Compounding this travesty is the Trump administration's use of religion to justify separating families at the U.S. and Mexico border. This is nothing short of religious malpractice. Attorney General Sessions' use of the Bible to justify family separation echoes the way the Bible was used to support American slavery, Nazi Germany, and South African apartheid. The UUA rejects this administration's manipulation of sacred texts to explain the dehumanizing consequences of its immoral policies. Our UUA President, Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, closed the statement with these words: "Every human being has a right to flee from danger. every parent has a fundamental right to seek safety and survival for their children. Migration is not a crime. Being a refugee is not a crime. Certainly, I would do whatever was needed to protect my child and family. Wouldn't you? So this act of evil has brought many into a coalition of love. And that is what I recognize in the work of peacemaking. It is work that is inherently hard because it will bring up personal turmoil, maybe fear, insecurity, in acting towards others as our best selves, to those who we feel maybe have accepted injustice, who have bought into a culture of nastiness. When part of us wants not even bother working with anyone else, but we are about creating change that is literally building towards that arc of justice. Gandhi had to both keep his own movement together, and he had to convince the British that ruling India was a lost cause with a patience we can only marvel at. In the face of violence, Martin Luther King Jr. had to keep his own movement going, and yet knew that the very violence he and his people faced revealed the hollow arguments about the superiority the other side was making. It opened up the eyes of persons who either had not been tracking the civil rights movement at all, or not against it, but kept counseling patience. Don't push too hard. You could see there was a time to act, and act boldly, and act in common cause. With nonviolence, yes, but not to accept meekness or withdrawal. I mean, this is very crucial. The quiet statement need not be a weak statement. It's a statement of our truths, stated with our convictions, not accepting another person's argument on the face of it without commenting. There is no proof behind what they're saying. To enact love out in the world and practicing compassion in our actions, we are not doormats. We are not going to be silent in the face of nasty rhetoric. We're not going to play the victim. We speak our truths quietly, perhaps, if the occasion calls for it, but we always speak with courage. I think of Kristen Mink, when on July 1st, her husband spotted Scott Pruitt in a Washington, D.C. diner during lunchtime. She felt she needed to say something, but was afraid of creating a scene. She wasn't quite sure what to do. She was there with her family, friends, but she knew she had to do something. So she did some quick research on her iPhone, her cell phone, on all the scandals and the egregious policies Pruitt had been enacting at the EPA. And then stood up, picked up her 2-year-old son, cradled him on her hip, and walked over to his table. She spoke calmly, she spoke quietly, and she spoke respectfully. She said, "I urge you to resign before your scandals force you out." She shared how she wanted to have her son to be able to breathe clean air. Now, Ms. Mink is a teacher at the Quaker school Sidwell Friends. She and her family left immediately after making her statement. I think that because there has been such a lack of public accountability and of access to dissent to address our leaders, that people are feeling a need to do something on a personal level. I think that's where a lot of this is coming from. And Kristen Mink did this magnificently. Peacemaking, justice making also calls upon us to recognize that the opponent of the moment could one day be an ally. That's the difference between the word opponent and enemy, I think. If we go back in history, we've been in this place before, my friends. One side of the scene is so thoroughly evil that we can't deal with them, and this goes back to the Cold War. Think of October 1962. Cuban Missile Crisis left both President Kennedy and Premier Khrushchev frightened about how close the world would come to nuclear war, World War III. They both recognize that something has to be done to step back from that danger. So in that spirit, President Kennedy, in the American University speech in June of 1963, proposed the Partial Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, which was already going into negotiation. This was at the height of the Cold War. He humanized the other side. Basically, one of the wonderful quotes from that speech is that there's a basic common link. We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's futures, and we are all mortal. To gird ourselves to protest, to gird ourselves to organize, to reach out and to march and vote, to break barriers, invite us into this work we need to do, on and on and on, means we must persist. Persist. There are times we want to just stop for a while, understandable, and we need to. We have this piece of our lives, but think about just our everyday work, our everyday family lives, our everyday responsibilities. How do we fit this all in? How do we make room for this? Yet, we do persist in the times and the moments we have to do it. Good example is very recently, my wife Stephanie and I had a long delayed anniversary trip. We went down to the little mountain town Julian, eastern San Diego County. And when I was planning it, she said, "Dear, one thing we're going to do on Saturday is we're going to go to San Diego and we're going to go to the Family Reunification March." I said, "Yes, ma'am. Yes, we are." Let me tell you that experience. It was just wondrous. I know MoveOn.org, I believe, organized, and other groups did too, all around the country, these types of marches. But the one in San Diego had such a positive energy to it. The groups that had drumming, music. There were groups that were doing these little chants. One of my favorites was, "What does democracy look like? This is what democracy looks like." Yes. And one of my favorite signs was, "Karma has zero tolerance." That was pretty good. Yeah. Clever, very clever. But we take these chances, these opportunities when we can to make that difference. And one of the things really interesting, there was a woman that did these monitors, these bright vests on and headsets, kind of keeping control of the thing. And I was talking to this woman who was one of the monitors, and she says, "This has really turned out beautifully." He says, "Well, one thing we want to really thank the San Diego Police Department. They helped us organize 3 marches. They were professional, supportive of it, and I remember we got back to the waterfront park where it started, and that's where it ended. I saw a San Diego Police Department SUV, the sergeant, and I saw the officer standing over there and people talking to him. So I actually went over and said, "Thank you, officer, for making this a really successful day." With a big smile. We shook hands. So there are these moments that can happen, can open up people's hearts. I mean, the only thing that really did, there was a particular media van with a certain media organization outlet that got shouted at. Starts the word and X. But that was about it. And there were even people there, I'd say counter-protesters, with their signs, "Build a wall," but no one was picking a fight. No one was there to pick a fight. We were there for the kids. So, the work of justice, renewal, and restoration, we know is not for the moment, It's not even seasonal, it's of a lifetime. Yes, there are times we've got to step back, calm ourselves down, vent our anger. There's even a process in liberation theology called praxis, Praxis. And this process is of basically reflection, action, evaluation, reflection, action, on and on and on. And it's actually a really powerful tool that can be used by individuals and as groups. And one of the things we want to do is, how do we create allies? How do we take that reality that we're going to fail as well as succeed? But I believe we will persist, we will grow larger communities of goodwill and generosity. We will break down silos. We will create connections that can last a lifetime. We can do it here in our own community, locally, nationally. It's work we have to do, and we are doing it. We know we'll have the chances to listen with authenticity to other stories, to seek the aching heart. We have it to sort of spiritually and be sustained in a personal growth. We will keep going. We ask of ourselves, give us the tools and the ability to be humble, to be organized, to be compassionate, and attuned to justice. Our faith calls us to do no less. And the work is risky, but the work can be exhilarating and is. I think of the courage of Malala Yousafzai to speak, yes, for herself and others. I think of the courage of King and Gandhi and Kennedy to speak their truths to power and hostile mindsets. Our community, as we know, is always on the verge of a new adventure. We're in the right time, in the right place, and we are the right people. We are the right people to start this journey of serving as peacemakers. It is right and it is time to heed the words of Bandeka, another fine UU theologian. This common world I love anew. As a lifeblood of generations who refuse to surrender their humanity in an inhumane world, courses in my veins. From within this world, my despair is transformed to hope, and I begin anew the legacy of caring. My brothers and sisters, this is the power of love. The power of love will uphold us. The power of love will keep us persisting into the future. We have the heart and mind and hands to do our part in the long story to make the whole the interdependent web of which we are part. When we care about our values, we act on our values and reach outside of ourselves, our faith can ignite fires of justice. When we do the quiet work of learning how to nourish communities, we then stretch ourselves spiritually by entering into the profound and exciting and scary world of diverse communities that need a bridge to create the dialogues that can lead to one of the oldest, most beautiful human words, the creation of shalom. To repair the world, to repairing creation. So in this spirit, my brothers and sisters, I say to you, blessed be Salam, Shalom, peace be upon you, and amen.